impossible has happened. Unbelievable. No record for human life. Off to the races. Can they catch it?
Now he takes off the shirt. He's running down the middle by the 50. He's at the 30. He's bare-chested and banging his chest. Now he runs the opposite way. He runs at the 50. He runs at the 40. The guy is drunk, but there he goes. The 20. They're chasing him. They're not going to get him. Waving his arms. Bare-chested. Somebody stop
Look
that
out.
man.
Here comes the blue coat,
Oh,
Kevin.
they got him.
Here
They're
comes the
coming
blue
from the
coats.
left. Oh, and they tackle him at the 40-yard line.
I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep in love. I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep in love.
And now for our feature presentation.
Balls Deep with Devin Jovan.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Balls Deep. This is episode 21. And today we're going to be talking about some NBA, NFL, and UFC. We kind of took a little week off because we were dropping our divisional predictions for the NFL season. So we were giving you guys some time to watch those and, kind of get a look into what we thought we would see from this NFL season. So to jump right into it, we're going to jump into the NBA. We're going to start talking about these playoffs.
Playoffs?
Obviously, we got the Lakers versus the Nuggets. Currently, the Lakers are up 2-0. And then we have the Celtics and the Miami Heat, who currently are 2-1 with Miami leading 2-1, obviously. We're going to be talking about our predictions or what we had as predictions and what we see going forward from these, matchups in these conference finals. So,
being that, tonight is game 3 of the Lakers Nuggets, I guess we'll talk about that first. For me, I'm going to keep, my streak going. Lakers in 6. Past 2 series I said Lakers in 6 and they ended it in 5. Nice gentleman sweep. So I'm going to keep that going. Hopefully they'll continue that. But I had Lakers in 6, and first 2 games, I should say, proved my point. The reason why I had Lakers in 6 was because I didn't think the Nuggets had a solution for Anthony Davis or even LeBron James, driving the paint. And Anthony Davis proved why he's a problem. Game 1, they really had no solution for him. Game 2, they kept it close. They actually almost pulled off a victory if it wasn't for Anthony Davis' buzzer beater, which he, claims he said Kobe on when he took the shot, which
afterwards.
He claims it afterwards, but it was in the Mamba jerseys, so it was meant to be. It was meant to be. I think this might just end in a sweep. Not even a gentleman's sweep. Unless they come out looking like they did for game 2, or even better, I don't see them taking a game. If anything, I have them taking 1 game. But like I said, Lakers in 6, so I don't see them taking any more than 2 games. But the way the Lakers been looking, they ain't taking nothing. We taking the brooms out real soon.
Yeah. Prior to this series, I would have said in 5 because, like you said, we had beat all the other teams in 5 in the prior series. So I was kind of thinking that the Nuggets would be able to steal one. Obviously, we know what Jokic and Jamal Murray have been able to do, especially from behind in their earlier playoff series. So I thought they'd probably be able to steal one, especially, if Jokic was able to play aggressive, which he did last game. He looked very good. I believe he dropped 31. So I believed that they would be able to steal a game. But the game that I think was theirs to steal, which was last game, we kind of stole back with that Anthony Davis buzzer beater. So, like I said, before this series, I probably would have gone and said it was going to be 5 games. I don't see the Nuggets getting any more games. The Lakers obviously, are playing very well. They have no answer for Anthony Davis. Really, their only chance has been when Jokic is playing aggressively. and more so on the scoring side end of the offense rather than the passing side. But we have all the momentum right now. Obviously, we hit that huge buzzer beater. We're up 2-0. Like I said, the game that I think they would have been able to steal, they kind of got it stolen from them.
They need, like, they know what they're gonna get from Jokic on the offensive end,
Yes.
night in and night out. The Lakers are doing their best to minimize that with throwing different bodies at him in terms of Anthony Davis.
Which they did very well in game 1.
Yep, Dwight Howard and McGee. Dwight Howard looks like his old self. The series, which is great for Lakers fans and Lakers Nation, but it's not great for anyone else. So if he, looks like his Defensive Player of the Year himself, Lakers are winning it all, and there's no question. But they need Jokic to pick it up on the defensive side of the ball, and that in game 2, I think he did that. I mean, he didn't really do much. It was just more so making Anthony Davis do the little things, which caused them to get into foul trouble. Yeah. And that was, boxing them out for rebounds and stuff like that, just because he knew he'd, cause a foul. So that they need more of that from him, if they have any chance of winning the series. But like we both said, Lakers are winning the series, whether, the Nuggets take game 3 or not.
Yeah.
It's just that simple.
With that being said, we'll move on to Miami versus Boston. Obviously, we know Miami took a very quick lead, a very quick 2-0 lead against the Celtics, actually being down in both of those games, and then actually having come back, because for some reason it doesn't look like Jimmy Butler's interested in playing until he needs to. So, and then obviously we saw the Celtics play very well, and still actually, Miami actually did very well at the end of the game and almost coming back in game 3. We saw what happened in the Boston Celtics locker room after game 2. After going down 2-0, we heard a lot of arguing going on, guys getting into fights. So it seemed that helped them out in game 3. How far do you think it's going to get them from here on?
I mean, prior to the series, like we mentioned in the past, we both had the winner of the Raptors Celtics going to the finals. So I'm going to continue with that. Prior to the series, I had Celtics winning in 7. I think the Heat were on a streak. I had them beating the Bucks, but I didn't have them beating either the Raptors or the Celtics. And with that, them stealing game 1, which was a great game, by the way, put the Celtics on notice, but then to back that up with game 2 was crazy. I mean, that's what caused Marcus Smart to call everyone out, because I feel like he's actually showed up consistently for that team. Yeah. Kemba Walker, he's my favorite player, but he's been lacking. He doesn't look like his normal self. They're just a terrible third quarter team, honestly, because there's those games where they've had the lead, and come third quarter, they're getting outscored double digits, and it allows the other team, like the Miami Heat, to bounce back in to the game. That's what happened in game 1. Celtics were winning, then the third quarter came, and the Heat came back and made it close and made it a ball game, and then that game ended up going to I think it was overtime, and Bam Adebayo got the block at the rim on Jason Tatum that would have won the Celtics the game.
Yeah. Before this series and even now, I'm going to kind of stick with the same thing. I thought this series would go to 7, and even after Boston was down 2-0, I still felt that they would figure it out and, still make this a series. So I do think this series is going to go to 7. And I got the Celtics winning, but they do have to be careful with, I guess, being too aggressive in certain situations and making those mistakes, in which allows Miami to come back. And I think the key for Miami, if they do want to continue winning this series and actually, get to the finals, is Jimmy Butler needs to be aggressive a lot sooner in these games.
Yeah, for sure.
Otherwise, it's not going to go well for them. But like I said with the Celtics, I mean, we saw they were up in game 3, and then Marcus Smart taking an early shot with like 16 seconds still left on the shot clock. Obviously, I mean, it ended up working out for him because he did get fouled, but it was a shot he didn't need to take. And a shot that, if he did miss it with no foul, would have given the Heat another opportunity to score a basket and start making a run. So it's mental mistakes like that is gonna really, hinder the Celtics' chances at making it to the finals. So it's things like that they need to clean up if they do want to come back and win the series, which ultimately I do think they will. Going off of kind of what Draymond Green said, he said if the Celtics kind of didn't have that fight in the locker room after Game 2, he feels like that would have been an even bigger issue than them actually having that fight, because they kind of needed that to come
spark
together as a team. They needed that spark. So I think that's going to push them. I think Miami's still a good enough team to make this an interesting series.
Oh, for
so
sure.
I do think it's going to go to 7, and I got the Celtics coming out.
I mean, also the Celtics got Gordon Hayward back for Game 3, and it looks like they're gonna have him moving forward, just because he said even though if his wife ends up giving birth to their unborn child, he doesn't plan on leaving the bubble because he already had left the bubble due to his injury.
Yeah.
But he brought that spark off the bench that they needed on the offensive end. So I think moving forward, he will be the X factor. If he shows up, they'll win, and if he doesn't, they'll be in the same case that they were in for Game 1 and Game 2. So he's the X factor. I think he'll make the difference on whether they win or lose this series. And with that, we're gonna move forward to some UFC. This past weekend, we had a fight night. A UFC fight night. And the main event was Covington-Woodley. Woodley, going into this fight, he was on a 2-fight losing streak. He lost to Usman, and he lost to Gilbert Burns. Make that 3 fight lose streak, because he just lost to Covington. Although he did look a lot better than he did in his past 2 fights, he didn't do enough to even win or get close to winning the fight against Covington. In the end, he needed a stoppage on his part to win that fight going into the last round. But we seen, he dealt with an injury that caused the fight to be stopped and Covington to win by TKO, you can say. He ended up breaking his ribs. So I think he should retire after this, just because there's no way of him bouncing back. I know you don't like him, and you feel like he should have retired a long time ago. But in terms of Covington, I don't like him, and after the fight, he called out Masvidal and Usman. I hope he fights one of them and he gets punched in the mouth, just because he needs his ass whooped. And just like Usman did it with the past fight, he broke his jaw. He needs his jaw broken again. I don't like him, and I hope he doesn't, do well. But there's no way he fights Usman before Gilbert Burns. And I think Gilbert Burns, deservingly so, deserves that championship fight. So maybe if Usman beats Burns, he can fight him. But I think, if anything, he'll fight Masvidal before he fights Usman again.
Yeah, I agree. I think his next fight is going to be Masvidal. Everybody in the UFC and around the UFC is kind of on the same page that you are, and really, it's got to be Burns before it's Covington. And with everything going on, it's the biggest story in UFC right now is Covington and Masvidal, because all the trash talking that's been going on, the history of being teammates, formerly. So I believe that is the next matchup for him. And as for Woodley, I said it before, and I'm gonna double down now. I think he should retire. His coach even said so. His coach said, when you're a young fighter and you have that mentality, you go in there, you have that mentality of, I want to go in there and I want to beat the shit out of this guy. And as you get older, you just kind of lose that mentality, and it's more so like, we could just talk it out. And it kind of seems like that really, and that's exactly what he said, almost verbatim. And so it just seems like Tyron Woodley doesn't really have that mentality in him anymore.
He don't got that dog.
Yeah, he just really doesn't. And his coach said, even if you could just try to get him to get it for that one night that you need it on that fight night, but it doesn't really seem like he has it anymore. And it's tough to really bounce back, like you said, after especially a 3-fight win streak against these top tier fighters.
3-fight lose streak.
3-fight. That's what I said. A 3-fight losing streak. Sorry. it's going to be tough for him to bounce back and, get back into title contention, especially with all these young guys that are coming up. And what really are you fighting in the UFC if not for title contention? At least for somebody like Tyron Woodley, I could imagine that's what his mindset might be.
Yeah.
And to clarify, I only don't like Tyron Woodley because I think his fight,
His fights are
his
boring.
fights are boring. His fight style is boring, but he is a good fighter. But ultimately, I think his time has passed.
For sure.
He's getting to that age for UFC fighters. I think he should just retire.
I mean, I wanted to give him a chance, and I said this last time. I said he needed to bounce back this fight, and he didn't. And you can tell just on this fight alone, or just based off his last 3 fights, he looks like a deer in headlights.
Yep.
And a deer in headlights in the octagon is not something that you want, especially for a championship fighter or a former champion at that. So it's gonna get ugly. We shall see what his future lies, and where Covington ultimately fights next. But this upcoming weekend is UFC 253, which is headlined by Israel Adesanya and Paulo Costa. So this is gonna be a good fight.
Yeah,
I'm excited for it. I think Adesanya, this is probably his biggest challenge as a champion since becoming champion.
Yeah.
We're gonna give you our predictions for that and the co-main event between Dominic Reyes and, how do you say his name?
Jan Blachowicz.
So we'll give him that fight is for the vacant light heavyweight title that John Jones vacated now that he moved up to heavyweight. But for our prediction for this between Adesanya and Costa, I'm going with Costa. I think this is, like I said, the biggest challenge he's faced as a champion. Costa's he's too big, and I think his size will ultimately play an advantage in this matchup between Adesanya. Adesanya, his past fights tend to he leans more towards his speed and uses his speed to his advantage against his opponent. But Costa's just as fast as he is, and he has the power behind his punches. So I think we might be seeing an upset this upcoming weekend.
Yeah, for me, I agree completely. To me, this fight is going to be very similar in a way to the brawl that he had with Kelvin Gastelum. Only because Costa likes to push the pace. He likes to be on you. All 5 rounds, he's going to be on Adesanya, pushing the pace, really laying into him. I feel like it's going to be tough for Adesanya to kind of withstand something like that. I mean, we saw what happened between him and Kelvin Gastelum. Obviously, he won the fight, but it was a very close fight, and Gastelum really, came into brawl, as he always does. But it's going to be a lot tougher to get into that kind of fight with a much bigger opponent in Costa. Obviously, we know that Gastelum has that punch power, that knockout power, but not to the extent that Costa does. I mean, Costa's a whole different animal. He's 10 times bigger than Gastelum is almost. So I mean, it's gonna be really a tough fight for Adesanya. I think his best bet is to kind of sit back and try to, in a similar way of what John Jones does, is keep your opponent at a distance. I think that's his best opportunity to win, is just try to keep the fight slow at his own pace and keep, Costa as far away from him as possible, with leg kicks and things like that. So,
and I think that's what, if he does pull off the win, it would be because of his leg kicks.
Yeah, exactly, and because of his length and everything like that. But I think it's going to be tough for him to withstand, Costa kind of laying into him and pushing the pace and tiring him out for 5 straight rounds. So I actually do have him losing this fight as well.
And what do you think about the co-main event?
And the co-main event, Dominic Reyes and Jan Blachowicz. I like Reyes in this one. I mean, we kind of spoke on it a little bit. Mostly because he's the last fighter we got to see against John Jones. So we kind of have the best idea of kind of where he's at. I mean, he's had the more recent fight, I believe. But also, Dominic Reyes is a fighter that kind of pushed John Jones almost as much as anybody has. So I do think if he does want to win this fight, he has to take it to the same kind of extent that he did the John Jones fight. and he can't take it any easier just because it isn't John Jones. If he pushes that same pace that he did against the former champ, I think he has a good opportunity of winning this. I mean, this is a guy that, people kind of thought should be defending this title Saturday night, because a lot of people did think, not me, but a lot of people did think that he actually should have won that fight against John Jones. And to say something like that, obviously, is pretty big. So for me, that's really why I lean more towards Reyes. He was able to push, John Jones as far as you really can, and came as close to winning as anybody. So it's going to be tough if he puts that kind of pressure and pushes the pace as he did against John Jones. Against Jan, it's going to be kind of hard for him to, compete with that.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, I'm picking Reyes to win this fight as well. Just his performance against John Jones, I had him winning that fight as close as it was. Just the fact that you said he pushed Jones to his limits. So I think with John Jones being the measuring stick in that division, we've seen what he's capable of. I don't know really what his opponent is capable of, if I'm being honest with you. But Reyes looked impressive against John Jones, and I think that'll carry on. If not, he'll look even better, just because he won't be going up against someone of John Jones' caliber. So I think Reyes will ultimately walk away with the title, and we've seen that he still wanted John Jones to stay in the division so he can get his rematch. That's not going to happen, but he can make a legacy of his own in that division by becoming champion this weekend, and trying to stay champion for future fights after that.
Yeah. With that being said, we'll be right back with our NFL predictions.
Yo, what's up, everybody? King Triple C here, the Olympic champ, the flyweight champ, and the bantamweight champion of the world. In other words, the GOAT, the greatest of all time. Meh, that's right. Anyhow, I want to give a special shout out to Devin and Jovan. I know you guys have started your podcast, Balls Deep, with Devin and Jovan. I want to congratulate you guys, and I want to tell everybody that's out there that doesn't know about them to you guys follow them, subscribe to them, and you guys make sure to follow them on all your social media platforms, because if you don't, you guys can bend the knee to Triple C.
All right, and we're back. We're going to be talking about some NFL. We just got past a injury-riddled week 2 that's seen a lot of big names get hurt, and a lot of them are out for season. Nick Bosa and Saquon Barkley, and even Bruce Irvin tore their ACLs. Malik Hooker, tore his, I think it was his Achilles. There's other big injuries around the league. Solomon Thomas is out for season. Christian McCaffrey's out for a few weeks. Jimmy Garoppolo's hurt. I mean, the list goes on. It was kind of ridiculous how many people were injured this past weekend, and that allows the season to be up in the air, just because you don't really know what's going to happen moving forward, whether it's in terms of how the team performs or just who else gets injured at this point.
Yeah.
2020 just seems to get even worse. As a Giants fan, seeing our only optimism go down is heartbreaking.
For me, as much as it hurts as a Giants fan, there wasn't really much that people really had going for us this season anyways. I think if anything, the team that's most hurt by this injury riddled week 2 is going to be the 49ers,
because they have so much high expectations.
Obviously, such high expectations. They brought back basically the same team, but losing their best pass rusher and Nick Bosa, losing Jimmy Garoppolo for who knows how much time, losing D Ford, who's they're probably their second best pass rusher. I mean,
Mostert,
losing Mostert,
Tevin Coleman,
to lose guys like that so early on in the season. I think I'm pretty sure I touched on it in my breakdown. If you haven't watched that, go watch it. It's gonna affect them, especially being in such a stacked division. If they drop a few games, especially with that tough schedule, it's gonna be kind of hard for them to
bounce back,
recover this season. So
And with that, we're gonna move forward to our week 3 predictions. Or we talk about 3 key matchups. We predict the winner that we had in those matchups, and then we go into selecting our lock and our upset for the week. Last week we both went 3-2, which means he's 5-5 on the season, and I'm 6-4 on the season. So his upset in the Lions didn't pan out for him. He did mention the Raiders.
They don't know how to hold the lead.
He did mention the Raiders, who actually beat the Saints, but he didn't go with them, so that's on him. I went with the Giants. They were down 17-0 at one point, came back and lost essentially at the buzzer, basically.
Yeah, they had an opportunity to win it.
They had an opportunity to win it, and they failed, so they lost 17-13. Both our locks won, and the Falcons failed us both once again, where they were blowing out the Cowboys and allowed them to come back, and then all they had to do was jump on the onside kick, and they didn't do that, and then the Cowboys kicked the field goal one by one. What was it, 50-49? It was a shootout, and we did say
I thought that game was over,
and we did say that game was going to be game of the week, and I think it proved us right. But we didn't have the right team, coming out on top. And then, but as for this week, we're going to be talking about 3 matchups, and the first matchup we're talking about has to do with one of those teams. It's the Cowboys versus the Seahawks. For me, I have Seattle winning that game. I mean, Dallas hasn't looked impressive to me. I don't care how much they came back last week to win. That I put that more on Atlanta and their defense and coaching, whatever you want to call it. I blame them on why Dallas came back and won that game. But Dallas week 1 did not look impressive against the Rams. Game in week 2 they were getting blown out against Atlanta. So they're going up a team of Seattle's. Their standard. They're a top 5 team in the rankings at the moment. I think Russell Wilson's going to fry. That's my MVP pick. He's going to fry. And then defensively, Jamal Adams, I think, is going to play a big factor. And the reason why I say so, he wanted to go to Dallas. Dallas didn't go pick him. Yeah. And I think he's going to have, a vengeance. Even though, he's not the Jets. They're not the Jets, and he didn't really play for them. I think he's going to prove them, or give them a reason why they should have traded for him ultimately. And I think he's going to be the X factor that wins them the game. We already expect Russell Wilson to do Russell Wilson things. So,
for me, I got Seattle as well. I mean, to kind of go off what you said, I mean, Dallas really, they have all the talent in the world, yet they don't look impressive at all. I mean, obviously they were able to come back. Kind of, Atlanta kind of had the same thing that they did in week 1. Their defense looked actually pretty impressive, a lot more impressive than people kind of expected, and then they kind of gave it up all at the end. But that's not something you're going to be able to do against a defense like Seattle, because that Seattle defense isn't Atlanta's defense. That's a defense that we know what they're capable of. So it's going to be a lot tougher for them to get things going, as it was kind of in the beginning of the game in Atlanta. So I do have Seattle winning. Russell Wilson's playing MVP football. He's looking unstoppable. Kind of got that chip on his shoulder that everybody seems to think he has. No MVP votes ever.
A lot of the stuff you mentioned in your breakdown. So like we said earlier, tune into his breakdown.
Tune into my breakdown. I mean, Seattle's looking like a really good team, and for good reason. They're stacked on both sides of the ball. So with Dallas not really playing up to par as of right now, I don't see them going and beating Seattle.
And then we move on to our next matchup, and that's Green Bay versus the Saints, or Green Bay versus New Orleans. So Packers versus Saints. Who do you have?
Yeah, for me in this one, I got Green Bay. Kind of for similar reason. I mean, Aaron Rodgers looks like the Aaron Rodgers of old. I mean, he's playing good football. I know Jamal Adams is out now, so that's obviously a big hit on, Green Bay. But
who? Oh, Devontae Adams?
I said Jamal Adams. Devontae.
Well, he's not out yet.
Yeah, Devontae
uncertain.
Adams is uncertain right now, so obviously that would be a big hit if he does end up not playing. But obviously we kind of saw how the Saints struggled to kind of hold that Raiders offense just last night on Monday Night Football. So it's gonna be a lot tougher for them to go in and play a talented offense like the Green Bay Packers, especially with Aaron Rodgers slinging it. Like I said, having kind of, making his, candidacy for the MVP, making his just as well as Russell Wilson is. He's kind of doing the same thing, so it's gonna be tough for.
You ain't gonna say pause?
So I do have Green Bay winning this one. I do think it's gonna be a shootout. But ultimately, I think Green Bay is gonna put up just too many points for New Orleans to keep up.
I want to say New Orleans, but I'm not going to say New Orleans. No, the reason why I'm not going to say New Orleans is they're missing Michael Thomas, and it was evident what he meant to that team last night against the Raiders. They lost to the Raiders. So
I wouldn't say it like that. I think the Raiders are pretty impressive.
I mean, they're not terrible, but that's a game that they should have won, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. They should have won against the Raiders, and they lost, and Drew Brees didn't look that great against the Raiders' defense, and that's what I'm talking about specifically. Their defense isn't really that good. I mean, they're
young. I feel like.
They're young, but they're not proven, and I think the Saints' offense is so high powered they shouldn't really have problems with that, but they did, and I think that's gonna be the reason why I picked Green Bay. I love Devontae Adams. I think he's underrated. He might not even play, but I'm still going with Green Bay because, as Jovan says, Aaron Rodgers is slinging it. So he looks like his own self, and I think he'll continue that with that. It's gonna be a good matchup. I think it'll be low scoring. It's not gonna be as high scoring as people think, but Aaron Rodgers is gonna, work miracles, and they're gonna end up winning whether Devontae Adams plays or he doesn't. When with that's going to lead us to our last key matchup, which is against the past two MVPs on Monday Night Football, and that's going to be Kansas City, Baltimore. I was tempted to go Baltimore, but I'm going to go KC, and the reason why I go KC is Patrick Mahomes, I think, is just Patrick Mahomes. I mean, last year when we seen these two teams face off in the regular season, Kansas City's offense was just too high powered for Baltimore. I think obviously Baltimore got better on the defensive end, and that will cause trouble for Kansas City this time around. But I think that offense is too high powered for Baltimore to keep up. Yes, Baltimore ultimately can score a lot of points, but I think they won't be able to score enough to win this matchup just because Kansas City is ridiculous. And their offense is essentially covering up the flaws that they have on the defensive end.
I'm going to go opposite. I'm going to go with Baltimore Ravens. I ultimately do think that this game, I think both teams are capable of putting up points, and a lot of them. I think it's going to come down to the defensive side of the ball and which team's going to make a stop. And for me, that's the Ravens. They're obviously the more proven, the deeper team on defense. They're the better defensive team than the Chiefs are. Although the Chiefs are no scrubs on defense, they're capable of getting their takeaways. But I do think Baltimore is going to be able to make that stop and be able to win the game because of their defense. Especially because we kind of saw KC struggle early this past week against the Chargers on defense. So
special teams.
Yeah. So it's going to be real tough for if they come out kind of flat like they did, against the Chargers. It's going to be real tough to kind of make that up against a Baltimore team that isn't very fond of giving up many points. So although they are a very high-powered offense, I think it's going to come down, like I said, to those defensive stops, and I think Baltimore is going to be more likely to do it than Kansas City is, and that's really what it comes down to for me.
Alrighty, and this moves on to our locks and our upsets for the week. You want to begin? Who's your lock?
My lock is the Colts against the Jets. There's not really much to say other than it's the Jets. I'm kind of going with a safer pick this week. I'm trying to pad my record to keep up with Devin a little bit. But I mean, obviously the Jets are are awful. I mean, the only real bright spot they have on their team is Le'Veon Bell, who's injured, and even when he's there, they really can't get him going because of the scheme Gase is running over there. I mean, they really can't get anybody going at running back.
Nope.
So, I mean, honestly, this is a team I can see not winning a single game this season.
I said that in my breakdown.
I mean, I can make a lock pick against them every week and probably win it. But
I really made that same statement.
But yeah, I got the Colts winning this one really because the Jets are just that awful. And
They're the Jets.
And even just as good as Le'Veon Bell is, if you can't get him going, there's not much you're going to get going outside of that. So it's going to be a long season.
And Indy's defense did look impressive this past week.
Yes.
So, and that was against the Vikings, who have a much high power offense.
Although
so,
the Vikings haven't looked good.
Well, that was more on their defensive end. They're offensively, they still have a lot of weapons.
Yeah.
And you're now playing the Jets.
That's my breakdown. I break down the Vikings.
And now you have the Jets who don't have any weapons.
Kirk Cousins needs
to
take care of the ball.
As for my lock. My lock was actually going to be my upset, but I changed my mind. And I'm going to go with the Pittsburgh Steelers, who go up against the Houston Texans. And the reason why I had to switch my mind, Houston currently ranks first in most pressures allowed through week 2 or through 2 weeks, according to Pro Football Focus. And 2 of the Pittsburgh Steelers pass rushers in TJ Watt and Bud Dupree, TJ Watt is the highest graded defender through week 2 at 93.7, and Bud Dupree is tied for second, and TJ Watt is tied for fourth in total pressures through week 2. So, to summarize it, Texans can't block any pass rushers, and the Steelers seem to get through all offensive lines that they faced up until this point, and I think that's going to continue. Which is going to put pressure on Deshaun Watson to, utilize his legs more. And I think he's going to have to, create some plays with his legs, but he's not going to have enough time to make plays down the field. Yeah. And that's what ultimately they'll need that for them to ultimately win the game. And I don't think they'll ultimately get it. And that's why I picked Pittsburgh as my lock this week.
Yeah, ultimately it sounds like it probably result in Deshaun Watson making a lot more mistakes. It sounds like he's gonna have a long day.
I mean, he had one against Baltimore, so I think it's gonna just continue. And although I have them starting off 0-3, I think their schedule gets a bit easier, and I did have them winning the division in my breakdown. So I think they'll turn around starting week 4. But I don't know. First 3 weeks you play KC, Baltimore, and Pittsburgh. That's rough.
Yeah.
But as from upsets, I'm going with the Giants again. And reason for this, my girlfriend's a big 49ers fan, and we actually made a bet that the loser has to buy dinner the following day. So only reason why I'm going with them as the upset this week is because of this bet. I gotta stay strong and stay my ground. But also, San Fran is dealing with a lot of injuries, like you said earlier. This
is a perfect week for it.
Yeah, they're the team most impacted by the injuries that happened week 2. Yes, the Giants lost Saquon Barkley, but they went out and signed Devontae Freeman, who may or may not play this upcoming week. But I think with the injuries to the 49ers, the Giants have a perfect opportunity to actually, pull off a win in their first win of the season. They could have done it last week against the Bears. But I think this is the week, and I think I'm going to be getting a dinner the following day.
Interesting. My upset pick, I'm going to go with Oakland versus New England. More so because I kind of wish I would have stuck with Oakland last week. I did mention that I like them against the Saints in Monday Night Football because I do think they're a lot better team than people give them credit. But ultimately, I'm picking them because, although that New England defense is really good, Oakland has a really good offense. Young offense, but a really good offense. They have, Henry Ruggs, Hunter Renfrow, Josh Jacobs is running the ball very well. Even on the defensive side of the ball, while they're very young, they do have some good talent in Clyde Farrell, Jonathan Hankins, Raekwon McMillan, and so on. And obviously we saw what they were capable of. Obviously not as talented a defense as New England, but we saw what they were capable of putting up points against teams and being able to kind of stick with those teams that are able to put up points. So obviously we saw that New England's capable of putting up points too, because we saw what they did against a good defense in Seattle. But I think ultimately if it comes to like a shootout type situation, I think Oakland wins that, because I think New England's going to rely more on their run game rather than they are in that pass game. And ultimately it's going to be difficult for them to do. It's going to be difficult for them to get a win against Oakland if it becomes a close game late, for the same reason that we kind of saw what happened against Seattle. I mean, they weren't really able to get the ball in the end zone late on a goal line stand because they have to rely so heavily on their running game.
I just think that was more predictability, just because they were doing it. They were doing all game and it was working effectively. So Seattle assumed it was going to,
I mean, it's what's been most effective for them in general. I mean, obviously,
for sure.
We know that Cam is capable of throwing the ball, yet they're not really letting it loose all that much.
I do think you're picking Oakland, or should I say Las Vegas? You're picking Las. No. I just said Oakland. You're picking Las. You're picking Las. What does it matter? You're picking the Raiders the wrong week. I think you should have picked them last week, and I think this week they stand no chance against New England, just for the simple fact that New England just lost, and they're gonna want to redeem themselves and prove why they're such a powerhouse still in the NFL. And I think Cam Newton is gonna be, or he's gonna do the same thing Aaron Rodgers is doing.
Yeah, maybe
slinging it.
I think there's a lot that New England can do in their offense to obviously impress. But I feel like you said, they've just been much too predictable. I mean, we seen obviously that they lost to Seattle because of predictability. They weren't able to put up points against the Dolphins.
They've still looked impressive.
Yeah.
First through 2 weeks, they've looked very impressive.
Definitely.
But with that, we appreciate you guys as always for tuning in. Whether you're here from episode 1 or you're just tuning in for the first time, we hope you guys return for our next episode. It'll be episode 22. So we'd appreciate that. And if you haven't already, hit the follow button and subscribe to us. I mean, follow, subscribe on all social media platforms. The links will be in the description below. And that's all I have to say. You have anything to say?
If you haven't, go watch our breakdowns for our divisional breakdowns that all should be posted at this point, or at least when this video is releasing. So go watch our breakdowns. If you follow the NFL, you want to see how well we thought your team would do, or what you want to hear we think about your team, and for whatever you want to hear about the NFL, really just go watch our divisional breakdowns.
We made it.
See who we picked for our conference champions and who we have as our Balls Deep Super Bowl.
Balls Deep Super Bowl prediction. So make sure to tune into those. He broke down the NFC. I broke down the AFC. And so it should be very interesting. But for now, as always, we'll see you next time.
See you.
You're talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep. We're talking about balls deep in love. I'm talking about balls deep. My boy's talking about balls deep. We're talking about balls deep in love.